What's up, viewers, subscribers, and agents alike? This is your boy, Lord Light Luciferian Prince, coming at y'all once again. Welcome. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank y'all for being here. Thank y'all for joining. Thank you for watching the content. And above all else, thank you for dedicating your time and your space for broadening your horizons on multiple topics that are very rarely discussed in society today. Very awkward sometimes when you find yourself in certain positions, such as you come to my channel. But you're stuck now. You're in it now. We in this together. Anyway, if you're watching this video around children, please remove them from your immediate vicinity, as my videos are not for children. Simple as that. If they're over the age of 18, it's perfectly fine. Underneath, no go. This does not constitute legal advice. The sole purpose of my videos are for informational and educational purposes only, nothing else. Now, over the past few videos, I have been going through some literature for edification and your personal, knowledgeable studies for yourself to broaden your horizons on a very narrow subject when it comes down to our beginning in society. And it all starts with the contract that was made on behalf of our parents, who are nonetheless our uninformed enemies. Yes, our parents knew no better. Our parents, those whose parents are still here, and in cases of those whose parents are not here, we have been left with a burden. A burden that is far less perceived in society. A burden that a lot of people still don't seem to get. And I'll say majority of people, especially in this year of 2026. And the reason why I say this is because in this day and age, critical thinking is not a part of society. It's just going to be one to say it. It's not a part of society. And it's very sad. It's a very sad reflection on where our future is headed in this corporate country. Yes, people, our parents failed us. Now, when I say this, I'm not saying as far as raising you and upbringing and so forth. I'm not saying that. I'm saying commercially. That's what I'm talking about. And the reason why I'm saying this in a researchful sense is because our parents turned us over as a pledge to a corporate entity known as the United States of America. I don't care about your race, ethnicity, nationality, or origin. When your name gets put on a paper or a contract or anything of that matter, you are bound by obligations. The first obligation, which you were not mature enough to correct, was the birth registry. The reason why I'm saying this is because you were an infant. You couldn't even speak, much more less even cognizably realize what you were born into. But then you become an adult. Now they'll tell you the legal age for the adult is 18. Well, according to whose standard? The American standard. The westernized legal standard. To say at the age of 18, you can now sign contracts. Whether you know what they say or not. You are legally available to sign contracts. And they take you on your word for it. But you had to be 21 to partake in any type of adult, so forth and so on, right? And I suggest that you get ready to pull this out. Okay? Pencil and paper. I already showed the paper before, but get ready to get it. Because we're going to go in depth today. This is birth certificate continued. So, I want to make it very clear how we got in this mess that we're in I already explained the cause, and now we're living in the effects thereof. Because we are not, as you as being a human being, you are not looked at, and we already know that definition. You're not looked at as a natural person. Let's start putting it in proper context. To the system, you are nothing more than a battery. You power the economic system based upon the pledge behind your birth certificate. And if you do hear background noise, that's my neighbor working on their car or whatever. Whatever. If you hear it, don't worry about it. Stay focused. But anyway, you are a battery. You're a source of energy. Let me tell you why. We run off of electricity. We're beings of power, right? So you look at a battery has a lifespan. Doesn't last forever, unless of course nowadays it's rechargeable. But you're not. You're not rechargeable. But are you? You are. This is the reason why we consume certain foods. This is why we're shifting away from the alkaline diet, and we're living off of basically foods that are not nutritious enough. This is why life expectancy in this country is going down. Now, it seems like I'm going all over the place, but I'm not. I'm not. This is by design. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's by design because you're only eating enough to keep you alive and sustained long enough for you to make money for the system. What are you depositing? Your energy. You know, you're burning calories. You know, you got a lunch break and so forth and so on. It's all a system to keep you in line as a worker. I don't care if you have positions in government. You're still a part of the goddamn pawn machine. Doesn't matter. There's no exemption. You're not going to escape this without understanding why you're in this in the first place. But let's talk about it. A birth certificate does not positively identify you, but it admits that a living being with your name came into this world, touched down, and there is no actual viable proof of your death. Only a presumption of death based on the fact that the vital statistics people haven't heard from you since you left the hospital. No doubt it is time we all gave them and the deputy clerks of the probate courts across America a big fat hello. Why is this necessary? Because probate deals with decedents of an estate. If you have not corrected your status properly on the record, that's exactly what you are. And until you can prove yourself with proper documentation as to who you are and to who you are not, directed to the probate court in which you reside, you're dead, legally. Now, a lot of people will say, well, do I have to go to the probate court in which I was born? No, you must not understand the full faith and credit clause of the United States Constitution. Article 4, Section 1. It talks about public records, proceeds, documents have full faith and conclusive effect in one state that it does in another. You can look up full faith and credit in Black's Law Dictionary. 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th edition, doesn't matter. It's good in one state as it is in another. Sort of like you live in Alaska, but you want to get a driver's license in Florida. But your birth certificate is from Alaska. Florida will accept it. It's the same thing as probate court. It's the same thing. Full faith and credit. Full faith. Doesn't say partial. Doesn't say minimal. It's full. So do it in the county in which you live, or reside, or domicile, whichever we wish you to use. It doesn't matter. It's all the same. I prefer domicile, but to each his own. Now, a birth certificate does not function as a valid recording of your common law copyright to your own name. An estate. Notice what I said. Estate. Rather, it is a false claim against your name in estate, which has to be corrected. But in a negative way. The proof that it provides does preserve a public record of an event which you can prove and invoke by private means and from other public records to reclaim your interest in your name in the state. So it is a means you should employ in building your claims. For those who have been paying attention to the past few videos, you know exactly the path that I'm getting ready to drive you into. What follows was taken directly from law sources, and also unscrupulous people were attempting to piggyback upon and thwart and misrepresent any misuse of this process, i.e. agents. So in regards to this, you must understand, you must pay attention closely to everything that I say here. Let us talk about it. The title of this video, Birth Certificate. 7.14, Corruption of Law. Article 325, Settlement, Birth Certificate. Pay close attention and get ready to write. Canon 3348, a settlement certificate, also known as a birth certificate since the formation of central records and registers in 1836, is an official document possessing multiple legal functions and states under the central presumption that those against to whom such instruments are issued are a form of property and bonded servant, which is also slave. If you watch my video, History of Slavery, you notice it's a continuation of that. Just wanted to make you aware of that. To Western Roman and private banking interests, regardless of status or family or history. I said that in the beginning of the video. Okay? Canon 3349. Under statutes and policies promulgated from Westminster and other bodies, a birth certificate fulfills multiple and distinct functions and states, depending upon its recognition and activity at hand, including but not limited to. Subsection 1, certificate of title to certificate the use of person, being recognition that the state claims ownership by virtue of the certificate itself and all the information contained on it. Therefore, proving a certificate trust in place and that the man or woman or newborn to whom the certificate applies only has beneficial use of the name. And, pause, didn't I tell you that in previous videos, I told you you don't own it until you claim proper ownership of it? Other than that, you'll be considered salvage. You're considered lost at sea. This means that any entity can come along, unscrupulously use salvage. Why do you think all of a sudden you keep getting these letters, offers, and so forth from people you haven't contracted with? They'll send it to you in the mail. A credit card offer, some type of offer. That's because somebody, somewhere, is using your trust. As harmless as it may seem to you, somebody else is profiting off of your name because they sold your information. Which means that there are information brokers out here who use information from third-party sources to sell your property to someone else, and you're not making nothing off of it. That should be a problem to you. But a lot of people just say, well, you know, it is what it is. No, it is what it is. It is. What? You mean to tell me that somebody else is selling something that rightfully belongs to you, they're profiting off of it, and you're claiming broke? See what I mean? That's called a maritime lien. That means that it's just out there for anybody to use it whenever they want. Better wisen up. But hey, I'll digress. Subsection 2, certificate of title to property being the recognition of the fact of a birth certificate being a certificate that the name is properly, and therefore is considered properly recorded as property. And therefore the man or woman or newborn is now treated as property and no longer as a living man or woman, subject to the rule of law. And subsection 3, certificate of deposit and bailment, which means custody, being the recognition through the terms used to describe father and mother that a transaction has taken place and a newborn is no longer owned by the parents, but is in custody of the state. with the newborn being a thing. In law, it's called the res. Subject to the jurisdiction of the courts, having been registered, also known as enrolled. And subsection 4, certificate of second-class citizenship, under Sesta KV of person, being that the certificate recognizes a newborn not being a citizen, but a second-class citizen, not having full control over their body or mind, or name, or spirit, and claim all through the morally repugnant, profane, sacrilegious, and deceptive conduct of public officials. Didn't I just say that in the beginning of this video? Y'all are going to walk away from this video with your eyes wide open. It said you don't even possess your own spirit. That right there alone should make the hairs on the back of your neck stand smooth the fuck up. You have people in this world who really believe that they really own you. Lock, stock, and barrel. I told you it all deals with the three-tiered system. The Vatican being the head. The Vatican, that's the ecclesiastical Holy See. The City of London. Financial. Superpower. In Washington, D.C., the military-industrial complex. The one thing that all these entities have in common, they're independent city-states. The American flag you see flying is not the flag of D.C. The flag of D.C. is white, and it has 3 stars in the middle of it, representing the Trinity of cities. The American people are taxed, and the money is sent to the City of London through the form 8899 through the IRS. Your labor that you volunteer to have your money taken out of your account per paycheck goes overseas to other people. This is not a conspiracy theory. I'm sure if you've been on my channel for quite some time, y'all have seen videos that have abounded. One video that came out years and years ago, Zeitgeist, was a hit amongst the mainstream media, where a lot of people, was not the mainstream, but social media, when it was like the boom. So anything I'm saying has already been said. I'm just saying it in 2026, but this came out like 2015, 14, 15, something like that. Long story short, the same thing was said. So it's not no conspiracy theory, people. Anywho, let's go further. Now, subsection 5, certificate of bondage as slave, being the certificate as recognition of a man or woman or newborn as a member of the poor, the paupers, the infants, the idiots, the lunatics, and the horned cattle. The beasts, the creatures, the humans, the dispossessed, the insolvent debtors and criminals and enemies of those who have created holy mythical religions and legal texts to justify their exclusive positions as masters of a planet of slaves. Canon 3350. The term birth is a synonym of the Admiralty term birth, which is spelled B-E-R-T-H, from the late 1600s, meaning a fixed address or position on a ship or room in which the ship's company mess resides, or a space for a vessel to moor, which means to settle. Canon 3351. In terms of the history of birth certificates, settlement certificates, and diminishing, tricking, deceiving, lying, seizing, condemning, and cursing free people as slaves, wards, infants, cattle, poor, and commodities. Subsection 1 in 1535. Henry VIII of England and his Venetian Magyar banking advisors seized the property of the poor and common farmers under the pretext that they were small religious estates. By 1539, he did the same for large religious estates. By 1540, was to be owned through estates, effectively being welfare funds granted by the crown to the benefit of the use of subjects, with the most common being estates for the non-wealthy, now considered wards of the estate, Then in 1545, King Henry VIII reintroduced a little directly and solely connected to the slave trade of Rome, abolished by emperors and forbidden under Christian laws, called the custos rotulorum, meaning literally keeper of the slave rolls, into every county, to maintain records of the poor now as slaves. The same sacrilegious, immoral, ecclesiastically unlawful positions continue into the 21st century as connected with birth certificates. It's 2026, people, and the same shit is still happening to this day. This was in 1535 into 2026. Nothing's changed. I'm coming to show you that nothing's changed. Nothing has changed. You don't have to take my word for it. Subsection 2. In 1547, Edward VI issued a new statute that did forbid people considered poor from traveling except for work, or from claiming their own time and activities, and whether or not to work. All people, except those members of the ruling elite, particularly those non-Christian sects from Pisa, Venice, and parts of Spain, responsible for wholly false religious and legal texts, now declared slaves were either to be gainfully employed in the service of some lord or master, to work to death, or if they were found to be idle or enjoying life, then they were to be seized and permanently branded with a V, and either sold as slaves or exterminated. V means vagabond. The only exception to the rule were those men who choose to dedicate themselves to support the status quo and become educated and knowledgeable in the false texts and false scriptures of slave masters. This act, supposed to have been repealed in 1549, however, the act was then restored to full effect in 1572, and those subsequent repeats of repeals remains in force. Did you not just hear what was just read? They said if those people who were just simply enjoying life, I don't think that this gravity is really hitting some of y'all as hard as it really should. If it is, please leave it in the comment section. Feel free to leave any respectful comment in the comment section. Simply enjoying life. They don't even want you to enjoy life. That should disturb you. To be branded with a V. Doesn't that sound as simple as like today? Let's just say particularly, everybody's always like this. Simple people, they hang out in front of like gas stations, supermarkets, whatever. People are like, why don't you get a job? Do you not know that that's a slave mentality? That's a slave mentality. Who are you working for? Well, I'm working to provide a living. Okay, to who? For yourself? Okay, let's just say this. You're working to provide yourself for a living, but what you make, you have to send back out. Am I lying? Most people who have bills and so forth and so on, you work to just provide the simplicity, the simple things of nature that should be free. You see how much of a disaster we're in? But we're so numb as a society and so dumbed down as a society. I ain't saying everybody. I'm saying as a society that functions the way it does, don't realize the depth of how far this goes. This is back in the 1500s and it's 2026 and the same thing is still happening. Subsection 3. Under Queen Elizabeth I of England, a set of measures were introduced which had the effect of accelerating the disenfranchisement of land peasants into landless paupers in 1589. Peasants then required local parish permission to erect dwellings, such as houses we call today, Whereas before, the erection of a dwelling by a land peasant on their lord's land was considered a right. As a result, the ranks of the landless, poor, or paupers swelled as available to be press-ganged into work. And subsection 6, to placate the overwhelming hostility against England as a hellhole of slavery, exploitation, and superstition, a new act was introduced in 1601. And a secret version as to begin to industrialize, hide, and franchise slavery with the introduction of overseers of the poor as the foreman over the slaves, under a cleric of the parish, and the renaming of children sold as, and this is going to be a little harsh for you, sex slaves, and workers to be called apprentices. Thus, the apprenticeship system was invented not to improve conditions, but to rebrand slavery under the non-Christian English Venetian Peasant model of commerce. The act also introduced a new levy collected by parishes, which called the poor rates, now called council taxes, against wealthy property owners for their rent of use of the poor as slaves. This is the financial origin of annuities 100 years later. And under Charles II of England, the concept of settlements as plantations of working poor, controlled by the Church of England, was further refined in 1662. Included for the first time the issuance of settlement certificates equivalent to a birth certificate, passport, and a social security card. It's the equivalent. Rolled into one document. A child's birthplace was his place of settlement unless the mother had a settlement certificate for some other parish stating that the unborn child was included on the certificate. However, from the age of 7 upward, the child could have been apprenticed and therefore sold into servitude for some rent paid back to the church as poor taxes. The act also made it easier for the clearing of common houses of the poor, and for the first time made the definition of poor the value of tenancy being of common houses of the poor, and for the first time made the exemption from child slavery to adult slavery at the age of 16. And subsection 7, under the draconian and morally repugnant dictates of 1662, no one was allowed to move from town to town without the appropriate settlement certificate. If a person entered a parish in which he or she did not have official settlement and seemed likely to become chargeable to the new parish, then an examination would be made to the justices or parish overseers. From this examination on oath, the justices would determine that if a person had means to sustain himself, the results of the examination were documented to be an examination paper. As a result of the examination, the intruder would either be allowed to stay or would be removed by means of what was known as a removal order, commonly known today as called eviction. The origin of the modern equivalent of an equivalent of an eviction and removal notice when a sheriff removed people from their home. And notice what it said. If they would determine that a person had the means to sustain himself. So that meant that you were evicted because you could sustain yourself. Let me stop there real quick. In eviction proceedings, no one ever reads their real notice. Let me drop a hint on you. This is a Easter egg in the video. For those who have stayed this long, whose attention span hasn't wandered off. Whenever you see an eviction paper, you have to understand that they also have, in an eviction paper, they have a word called credits. If you ever really look at an eviction notice, it says credits. I done dealt with this with people over the years. It says credits. Instead of going into the court saying why you didn't pay, whenever you have to go to a judicial proceeding, you should ask why the credits weren't issued towards the balance that's overdue. But it's on eviction notices, but you have to read very carefully. Most people see an eviction notice, they just think they lost automatically. Read the fucking notice. If you made it 29 minutes into this video, that's an Easter egg for those who stayed. Those who left, oh well. Anyway, on to it. Subsection 8, 1667. The concept of workhouses were formalized and licensed as being effectively the very worst and hellish places where people considered prisoners could legally and effectively work to death for the profit of the elite pirates and thieves, under the full endorsement by the Church of England. This is the act of the invented concept of employment and the expansion of the highly profitable white slavery business models of English aristocracy or aristocracy, whatever you wish to say, doesn't matter. Thus, people who were taken into custody by virtue of being poor were expected to work as well as live in conditions as traumatic and evil as any civilized history. The difference between them and the difference between now is that people live in a more sanitized environment. Running water, you got electricity, you got your luxury, you got your TV, you got your smartphones, and you're comfortable. See, the rules of the game stay the same. The amenities have changed because of modernization, industrialism. But just take all of that away and imagine how these people had to live day to day. Now, this was called white slavery. Now, slavery in any form is horrible. Some people want that shit to persist because there's a psychological dysfunction in people who feel like they have the right to rule and lord over people. That's a psychological imbalance. Because the Most High did not program the human psyche to be conditioned to live in horror or to the beneficial interest to other people who don't lift a finger to do nothing but tell other people what to do. That's the psychological imbalance. That's the origin of the history of the spirit of a psychopath. A narcissistic psychopath who has the authority to try to tell themselves that these people belong to... What the fuck? So I don't believe that wars were fought in history not for a significant reason. They were fought for a reason. Because people were like, fuck that. And that's what rebellion comes in. Rebellion comes in for the simple fact you're pressing on me and you don't have the right to tell me what to do. This is the reason why a lot of people have to understand that's why they pulled themselves from underneath the yoke of these so-called entities that call themselves Great Britain and all that. What the fuck make you so great? That's a history for another time in another place. But we'll give you a little bit more in here. Crazy work. And an expansion of the highly profitable white slavery business models of English aristocracy, thus people who were taken into custody by virtue of being poor were expected to work as well as live in conditions as traumatic and evil as any civilized history, such as the prison modern-day industrial complex. Okay, 9. The abuse of poor prisoners through the workhouses employment model was extremely profitable, and a new act was required in 1670 to regulate corporations' renting of prisoners as employees for profit, particularly in the paying of their accounts to the crown. And 10. Previous acts were continued to be made were perpetual, such as the controls over paperwork and settlement certificates and the origin of ancestor of birth certificate by James II in 1685. As one of the new acts, the few acts of the ruling elite permit the remaining as active statute of Westminster under his reign. And 11, under William and Mary of Orange's 1691, the acts of workhouses and abuses of the poor were continued and further refined with greater oversight on paperwork and accounting for poor entering, leaving parishes, and to prevent fraud by overseers and corporations. In 1697, one of the more horrific of the wicked and morally repugnant acts of Westminster was introduced in the badge of the poor with the letter P, to be worn at all times on the shoulder of the right sleeve. Furthermore, all evidence as Jewish badges being introduced in Europe as early as the 13th century is wholly and completely false, as the term Jew was not revived until the 16th century. Instead, the first examples of badges as a stigma to status is most likely this act is subsequent acts against the poor by banking and ruling elite who chose to identify themselves as members of the same non-Christian religion invented in the 16th century that claimed to be victims of the same barbarity. The use of the P as a form of a curse and stigma on the same model of passports for citizens listed as paupers, poor, peasant, prisoners, property, or personal, which is what they're going to tell you stands for on the actual P of the quote-unquote passport used today. 1698, an act reinforced the measure of poor being one of those who do not have an annual least taxable at least £10 or more, making the time more than 95% of the population of England, Wales, Ireland, Scotland poor. And 13. In 1713, the extension of settlement certificates as a form of negotiable security was introduced for the first time and continues with birth certificates today, whereby those born in place without a settlement certificate, including women and children, could be moved to different locations, such as commercial workhouse, when costs of such certificates were purchased by a corporation. That's in less than 36 minutes. I could have went on further and further, people. I really could have. I could have went on at least close to 60 minutes. But I don't need to. I think that my point has been proven. You understand, now you understand why I keep telling you that it's very important for you to actually secure yourself. The same systems that existed centuries ago has not changed. The methods have changed, but it remains the same. The thing I want you to understand is this. The people who run industry and commerce in this corporation, pardon me, they don't want citizenry coming to a knowledge of how commerce works and how you can force your rise upward. This is the threat to that power. Is it wrong? No. I'm sure that a lot of people will guilt trip themselves into believing it is. But it's not. See, the people who basically, what we would consider at the top, they fight for their position every day. I mean, it's a battle you really wouldn't see because it's not publicly known. And when we realize that this is a system we were born into, and we start to grasp this concept every day, not just for a few minutes out of your day watching the videos. No, this is what you have to stick in your mind every single day. Your mere existence has been codified the nation over. You travel outside the country, their laws still apply. If you act out of whatever. You go anywhere except for open waters. On dry land, it applies. But Americans are the most aloof. Those American citizens, I should say, are the most aloof of their condition. Just because you can do certain things, which is cool, you still need some sort of permission. How in the world do we live in a country where it's illegal to defend yourself? Now, I don't care, because I'm going to defend myself regardless. That is my creator-given right. Period. Now, do I look for trouble? Absolutely not. But I'll tell you what, I don't look for it. But you get the rest of it. As much as I will resolve to live in peace with all men and women, that is my resolve. But don't step across my motherfucking toes. That's just honest. This country tells you you can't fish without a license. Even though the definition of license means to do something that actually would be deemed illegal or unlawful. I'm not understanding it. This is our problem. Because it's not about law. It's about how much revenue I can extract from you. Laws are there for the liability purposes. So if they know you're a worker and you have the capacity to work, because nobody lives in this country for free, everything costs. You just saw me drink a natural resource out of a plastic container. BPA free, by the way, according to the label. Kosher. Long story short, nothing is free. But you know what is free? Your ability to get the fuck up and do something about it. Your ability to stand up and do something about it. That's free. All day long. But the choice is yours. I'm not leading no resistance, no coalition. You see my motto, good vibes only. That's how I live. Good vibes only. If you want to do something about it and you want to stop dragging your fucking feet, email in the video description and in the comment section below. Use whatever one you feel. I check each and every one every day. The choice is yours if you want to do something about it. But if you don't want to do nothing about it, at 4116, cut my video off and act like I didn't say a damn thing. You have the right to swallow the blue pill. That is your choice. The red pill is offered to you as well. That is your choice as well. But I'll tell you what relies at the end of each one of those pills is the fucking truth. The truth is, you can go back to tomorrow. Oh, that stuff's confusing to me. I don't want to get involved. And they know this. And I'm going to say this because what I did say before is that the elite respect people who have intelligence. They do. It's a known fact. People who have intelligence, it's like a moth to a flame. They despise the lazy, the indolent, and the ignorant. Just thought I'd let you know a little bit about that before you proceed with what pill you wish to take. It says in scripture, a man's gift shall make room for him. I wonder what room they're talking about. See, in society, a lot of people get stuck with this shit. Where are our leaders at? Now you understand why social media says followers. It doesn't have a section that says leader. I follow you on Instagram. Look at what it means. Follow. See, in that instance, hold on 1 second. In that instance, you got to take it for what it's worth. This is the reality. It's never going to change unless you change it. Simple as that. If you're not really willing to change, no one can make you. There's a saying where they say you can lead a horse to water, right? You don't need to lead a horse to water. If a horse is thirsty, it drinks on its own self. So you lead that for a bit of information. But if you're tired of dragging your feet and you want a little bit of relief off the pressure that society keeps giving you, contact me. I'll be available on the other side for things that I cannot and will not say online. Other than that, I sign off. See you on the other side. Peace, light, love. Agents, you already know how I feel about y'all. But hey, the feeling's mutual. 10-4, I'm out.